I was thinking this morning about what I might write the day after the election results are declared. It hit me, however, that cheering or complaining after the election would be meaningless. Do something now. In a race this close, if I can convince even one person from a swing state to vote against Trump, I will have done some good. I thought of stopping the pendulum on the clock near me because of the ticking sound. I decided against it, however, because it serves as a reminder that the clock is indeed ticking. I believe that every voter who is a bigot will vote for Trump. However, I believe that not everyone who votes for Trump is a bigot. There are millions of kind, generous, honest, compassionate people who will vote for him. And I ask myself, how can that be? I think it's precisely because of their kindness and their generosity and their honesty and compassion that they could consider voting for him. They're too good to believe that any human being could be that bad. The past year has illustrated the power of propaganda. People in the MSNBC silo have never seen clips viewed by people in the Fox silo, and vice versa. The most powerful argument for me is that people who have seen from behind closed doors how Trump thinks and operates know he's unfit. People like Kelly and Mattis and Haley and Barr and Pence and Tillerson and Milley and Esper and Bolton and Hutchinson and Graham and McConnell have all made profound statements describing what a disgrace he is and why he's unfit. He's a brilliant con man, but he hasn't fooled them. He scared some of them into submission, but he hasn't fooled any of them. Trump is a malignant narcissist. Think about that. It means he cares only about himself in a sick way to the exclusion of others and to the exclusion of the country. People have weaknesses. People can do things to varying degrees that show ignorance or stupidity or cowardice or insensitivity, carelessness. I can forgive that in people, and I hope people can forgive that in me. What I can't forgive, however, is deliberate cruelty. Trump is mean. I can't forgive mean. I certainly can't vote for it. The thought of giving enormous power to a man who is deliberately cruel, absolutely devoid of compassion or empathy, is unthinkable to me. People are dead because they trusted Trump. People have gone to prison because they trusted Trump. I get the irritation that millions of people feel towards the liberal elite. There's an annoying sense of self-righteousness that many on the left convey that's insulting and infuriating. People on the left can convey the impression that they think they're better than people who disagree with them. This paralyzing atmosphere of political correctness has caused really great division in our country. People should be able to express honest, objective, compassionate opinions without being accused of being ignorant or insensitive. The media on the left often blow it. In their efforts to persuade, they take comments or actions that are worthy of criticism in their own right, but they twist or exaggerate them beyond the actual meaning or original intent, and thereby lose their credibility. For example, Trump has done horrible, insensitive, despicable things without caring about the consequences. That doesn't necessarily mean he intended the consequences. It just means he had no trouble engaging in irresponsible acts, not caring about the consequences. Did he actually intend that Mike Pence be hanged or that officers be killed in defense of the Capitol? Of course not. He was reckless and he was inflammatory. He was the catalyst and has no remorse for the consequences that predictably flowed from his selfish urging. That's reason enough to keep him out of the Oval Office. Did he intend that people die when he trivialized the dangers of COVID? Of course not. But that didn't keep him from lying about the dangers, despite knowing early on that this was a deadly airborne virus. He knew that before we knew that. And people who trusted him trusted that he was telling them the truth. And many of them, thousands of them, didn't bother to get protection, and they're dead as a result. The fact that Trump's selfish actions had deadly consequences doesn't mean he consciously intended those consequences. The consequences were the result of his actions, but not the objective of them. The left loses credibility when they accuse him of the latter. The worst example of this, of course, is Roe versus Wade. He brags about being responsible for it being overturned. I suspect he never contemplated that the state legislatures across the country would pass the deadly statutes that the Dobbs decision gave them the green light to do. Trump isn't opposed to abortion. He isn't opposed to saving a woman's life or giving a woman the right to control her own body. But he feels no guilt for being responsible for the unleashing of a torrent of vicious acts and laws that have resulted in incomprehensible suffering. Yet another example of Trump triggering horrible outcomes without remorse, all because he saw those actions as improving his chances of being elected and avoiding prison. Think about this. The Washington Post and the LA Times editorial staff want to endorse Harris. But the billionaire owners are afraid to have the papers endorse her because they fear the retaliation Trump will inflict on them if he wins. Imagine that. His tyranny has actually frightened some of the richest and most powerful voices in the country to remain silent. The way to remove the chilling effect Trump has on freedom of expression is to deny him power, not to grant him unchecked power. Trump brags how his power and fame allowed him to grab women by the private parts and get away with it. He lies constantly, sometimes pathologically, sometimes deliberately. His method of operation is to lie repeatedly, confident that if you tell a lie often enough, people will believe it. To him, telling the truth is a sign of weakness. He's a convicted felon. He's an adjudicated sexual predator. He's an adjudicated fraudster. He's deliberately ignorant on critical matters of foreign policy. He admires and supports dictators and has contempt for our allies. He thinks soldiers who gave their lives for our freedom are suckers and losers. Let me say that again. The man who wants to be commander-in-chief thinks that people who made the ultimate sacrifice are suckers and losers. How could we possibly let this depraved, misogynistic bigot sit in the Oval Office again? I'm a West Pointer. I remember sitting on the parade ground my first summer, listening to MacArthur's Duty, Honor, Country speech. These are values that are the exact opposite of what Trump believes. His principal duty was to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Instead, he worked only to preserve, protect, and defend his quest for personal power. His concept of honor is breathtakingly lacking. Even his most ardent supporters admit he has no honor. He can't handle the truth. He has contempt for the truth. Lying is a means of end for him. And as for country, he places himself above country. He was impeached twice, both times, for placing his interests above that of the country. Remember, a bipartisan majority of the House and Senate voted to remove him from office. They didn't have enough votes to reach the constitutional threshold for removal, but it still was a bipartisan majority of the Senate that voted in favor of his removal. They knew that he places his interests above that of the country. Duty, honor, country means nothing to Donald Trump. He's unfit to be commander-in-chief. He's unfit to stand behind the seal. He's unfit to receive your vote. Just think of the hundreds of ways he has lowered the bar. Surely the country deserves better. Surely we deserve someone who will at least try to set an example for honesty, decency, and public service. I voted in 13 presidential elections. I voted for the Democratic candidate many times. I voted for the Republican candidate many times. I voted for the person who lost 10 out of 13 times. That's a pretty amazing track record. In each of those elections, however, I voted for the person who I thought had the strongest character. So obviously my vote is a pretty lousy predictor of how the election will turn out. I desperately hope that this time a majority of voters in those swing states will agree with me. It's the most important election in our lifetime. There will be an incomprehensible wave of depression, fear, and sadness if Trump wins this election, especially among women. Let's finally get Trump off the stage and give the Republican Party the chance to heal and get back to principled debates on the issues. I was sitting at a lunch counter in 1968 listening to the eulogy for Bobby Kennedy. That assassination was a crushing blow to me and millions of Americans. And the eulogy ended with the following. My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life, but to be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Those of us who loved him and take him to his place of rest today pray that what he was to us and what he wished for others will someday come to pass for all the world. As he said many times in many parts of this nation to those who he touched and those who sought to touch him, some men see things as they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not. I see Trump differently and would give the following living tribute to Trump. Donald Trump need not be idealized or enlarged in the media beyond what he is in life, but to be remembered simply as a vile and selfish man who sees wrong and tries to exploit it, sees suffering and fails to cure it, sees internal division and tries to spread it. Those of us who loathe him and pray that he'll move on his way also pray that what he is to us and what he wishes for others will never come to pass in all the world. As he has advocated in many parts of the nation to those he touched and who sought to touch him, some men see things as they are and say why. Trump dreams things that never were, cruel, hateful, divisive things, and says why not. Please, America, for the sake of my daughters and my granddaughters, and for the sake of our country, for the sake of the world, do the right thing.